isn't you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the last stream of the month. The month is going to be ending tomorrow, so make sure you guys like the stream down below. You guys know the drill. The face cam can't go on until we hit 100 likes, and make sure, if you guys are new, you subscribe. If you want to use the live chat, make sure you subscribe. Just make sure that if you are subscribed that you hit the bell. But more importantly than liking or subscribing to this video or this channel, we have a very important election day. It's the most important election day since November. It's going to be taking place on Tuesday. And I thought in today's stream, it's been a little bit of a slow week. I'm not going to drone on about, minuscule developments in Trump trying to end the conflict in Eastern Europe or, tariffs. Are they going on? Are they going off? If you guys want to talk about that, you could send in questions via Super Chats. We'll get to them. But we have an election that's important. So if you have a friend in Wisconsin, or Florida's 6th district. Florida's 1st is probably going to go our way, but, if you have a friend there or family or whatever, make sure that you text your friends, your family, make sure that they get out and make sure that they vote on Tuesday, because I think the early voting window is closed in Wisconsin. I could be wrong, but I believe it's closed. Most states close their window on the weekend of. They don't have it on Monday, and then Tuesday's election day. So make sure that right now, before we even start the stream, before we even hit 100 likes, because we're on our way there, we're going to get there, like the stream, subscribe, all that good stuff. But what's most important is if you know people in Wisconsin, if you have friends, family, or if you live in Wisconsin, you know friends that supported Donald Trump, you make sure they get out and vote, because it is important. Because you could say, well, it's just a Supreme Court election. Does it really matter if we have the court? The answer is yes. Wisconsin could come down to 1,000 votes in 2028. It could be the most important state that could make or break a victory. So it is important that people show up and vote. It is true that we're not favored. It doesn't mean that we're going to get blown out like 2023. It doesn't mean that we can't win. So we need people doing their part right now. Maybe it's late. Maybe you set a reminder on your phone for tomorrow to call people that you know, to text people that you know, to get involved and make sure that people are going to show up to the polls and vote. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing my part if I didn't tell people to do that, because it is a very crucial election. It could dictate the outcome of the House majority in 2026, Donald Trump's agenda. These type of things matter. Every election counts in this country, and I feel like I haven't fully been doing my part to let everybody know about every little special election, and that's true because there's a lot of them. But it's up to me, it's up to you, it's up to us to be the ground game where the ground game may not exist. The Democrats have a good one, mainly because they just are able to turn out the high propensity voters in this country, and they do a good job of it. So we need people voting. And if we're able to get enough people voting, high turnout, we're the party that wins when there's high turnout. But we need high turnout of Trump voters. First to a million might win it in Wisconsin. And if that's the case, we need people out there voting, period. So without further ado, the live stream camera's on. We've got a great show for you guys tonight, just mainly talking about what's at stake this week, because Florida, there's going to be a couple elections in Florida. We're probably going to win the Gates District and the Panhandle, and we're probably going to win the 6th District, but still a little bit too close for comfort. We don't like the fact that it's too close for comfort. Randy Fine, I'm not a big fan of him, but we need the majority, and we need people out there and voting, period, because if we don't have that, we're not going to have our House majority. It's not going to be too good for us. So we need people voting, and we need people doing what they can. If you live in the district, make sure even informing a couple of friends in Wisconsin can go a long way, because a lot of people don't know these elections are happening. You know, presidential elections, it's like you got to convince people. Everybody knows they have to turn out and vote. If you just tell a Trump supporter, this election's crucial, if we don't win this, Trump's agenda is going to be stifled, you're going to go a long way at turning out voters that can actually make a difference in Wisconsin and in any special election that we have, because there's so many special elections, but it really is going to be a crucial one, because if you don't have the court, then what's going to happen? You're going to have Democrats, activists that pretend they're nonpartisan on the bench in Wisconsin, over there in Madison at the state capitol and the Supreme Court department of the Capitol. And what they're going to be able to do, okay, somebody's car alarm is, I can't control that, but you can't change that at the election, at the ballot box. But what you can do is you could change the trajectory of Wisconsin. Is it going to be a red-leaning swing state or a blue-leaning swing state? Are you going to have a majority in the state legislature? Are they going to try to draw these ridiculous Democrat gerrymander maps? Or are they going to try to get rid of 2 House Republicans? The majority could come down to 1 seat. Like, this is more, arguably just as important, if not more. It could end up being more important than the midterms. If that's going to be how close the House is, which it could be. Look at that map. Democrats are going to need to win 2/3 of toss-up seats to win the House. So they're going to try to do anything possible to draw out Republican seats. And I hope that, like Texas, if Wisconsin does it, I hope Texas does the opposite. It's kind of like a compromise thing. If one state does something, if a blue state does something, we need to actually fight back. We need to do it ourselves. All of that is true, but they have really bad geography. They're blaming Republicans having more seats on gerrymandering, when in reality, the geography just sucks for the Democrats. Now, are we going to gerrymander a Republican district in Massachusetts? We could actually draw 2 with the most recent results. Of course not. We're not going to do that, because geography is not on our side, and we don't even have the power to do it, should we? I mean, if they're going to do this, we should, but that's not the point. The main takeaway is that the geography sucks for Democrats. The map is probably one of the most fair maps technically in the country in Wisconsin. You have a seat for the Northern Highlands, for WOW, for the Bow counties, for the Driftless, for Racine, Kenosha, and some other parts west of there. Like, the map is probably the most fair map you possibly could draw in any state possible. They just don't like the geography of it. And then we could talk about the election laws. That's a whole nother thing we could talk about, because we know what happens in Wisconsin after hours, which could be a problem. But we need people out and voting to counteract any possible problem that we could foresee, because we understand Trump won, and I said, too big to rig. Donald Trump can win, but you had a lot of problems. Trump should have won Wisconsin by like 2. He only won it by 1. And Eric Hovde was on track to win for most of the night. He fell short. So very interesting. How does that exactly happen? Well, you could make an argument that there was some foul play at hand. So what we need to do is have election laws that, at least at a very minimum, are going to ensure transparent, clean elections where you see everything all at once. There's not going to be any big shady drops at 3 o'clock in the morning, one way or another. And as a result, you're going to understand which way the state is going to go. So it could be a close election. Brad Schimel is down in a lot of the polls, but at the end of the day, this is a very hard election to poll. It's all about turnout. I think that you could make the case he's down by a couple of points. He's probably down by more than that right now, but the election day vote's going to be heavily pro-Brad. So we need as many people out there as possible. You have to swamp them. We did much better in the early vote data than 2023 when we lost by 11, and that part is true. And you could look at this Elon Musk. He's been doing rallies, not necessarily just a rally for Schimel. He was there for a town hall, but he was there doing essentially a rally for Brad in Wisconsin. But you look at the mail-in ballots cast versus 2023 and the early voting. The mail-in ballots were cast heavily in favor of the strong Republican counties. That part is true. As for the Democrat counties, there was a little bit of an uptick because turnout overall is higher, but the turnout is higher, even higher so in the Republican counties and the Republican-leaning counties. And then when it comes down to the early vote data, in-person early voting in WOW, which is Waukesha County, Ozaukee County, and Washington County, we have a very high propensity Republican electorate in suburban Milwaukee. Those voters have been showing up and showing out, and you're going to need them to show up and show out for Brad Schimmel on Tuesday as well. But you like to have a big cushion in the early voting, but it's also going to come down to the driftless area, because a lot of people use this election in 2023. They said this is proof that Donald Trump can't win, which is the most ridiculous thing I've heard in my life, because how does this have anything to do with Trump? You have a candidate who was not endorsed by Trump, who was running from Trump, who was running scared on everything, got completely rolled over, got completely defined anyways, got blown the F out in Wisconsin back in April of 2023. Now, Brad Schimmel's fighting fire with fire. He's not stepping on any third rails in regards to the abortion issue. Of course, they're trying to make it about abortion, and they've gained a leg up on him when they've been doing so. Doesn't mean that he's going to lose. Doesn't mean we can't win. We need people out and voting for sure, but he's running a much better campaign. He's got a lot more money behind him. Elon Musk is partially there helping him on that front, and also in person with these rallies. And on top of it, Donald Trump has endorsed. He's not doing like a major rally for Brad Schimmel, but he is out there. He's endorsing. He's telling people to vote. He never did that last time for Dan Kelly, and Dan Kelly did get blown out significantly, but still, 200,000 votes. There were far more than 200,000 votes outstanding that would have voted for Dan Kelly that we could not turn out to the polls, and this matters. So the ground game matters. I mean, an election, off-year election like this, if every subscriber to this channel found via some avenue 1 million Trump voters, which would be about 4 or 5 per subscriber, that did not know this election was going on, or whatever, just making sure they voted, then Brad Schimmel would easily win. Because if you're at 1 million votes to begin with, 1 million would get you there. Maybe a little bit, maybe it'll be 1.1 or 1.2 this time, because the turnout is going to be higher across the board, and we understand that. But you need to find people who didn't vote in 2023 who voted for Trump to turn out for Brad Schimmel, and then Republicans are going to win. And obviously, it's not technically like a party election type of thing, because you have nonpartisan. They'll play these games. The left, they love to play the games. We should arguably be playing them too. But you have like this whole definition game of, they'll go to the driftless area. They'll say this candidate's actually the candidate for the working class, whatever. They'll try to like frame them like MAGA, and they do better. So people need to understand not to fall for these games. Brad Schimmel is the guy. He needs to win. It's a crucial election. We need people out and voting for him, and for him only. And you'll make up that ground in the process. But if you look at this election, it was lost in a lot of these counties that voted for Donald Trump in 2024 and 2020 and 2016, by the way. The Bow counties are another one. These are like a Republican stronghold. They weren't always Republican, but they've become more Republican as the years have gone on. But they're not like as red as WOW. They're not like trending super hard to the right, but they're reliably Republican at the federal level, even in like a midterm year at the state level. But still, you look at all these counties, they actually voted for the liberal. They voted for Janet Prstosowicz over Dan Kelly. And if you are Brad Schimmel in the state of Wisconsin, which again, Elon was doing the town hall in Green Bay, but these 3 counties, those are going to be crucial. If you're not winning those counties and you're not winning them by, sizable enough margin, you're not going to win as a Republican in the state. Now, the WOW counties, definitely the raw votes, I think, matter more than the percentages, but you need to really run up the score in the WOW counties. I don't think Milwaukee is going to have high turnout itself. Madison will. For the Democrats were strategic in choosing an activist judge from Madison, knowing Madison is a very liberal, very far left, high turnout area. It's crazy because there were more votes cast in Dane County than there were in Milwaukee County, which is sizably more populated than Dane. But still, people that try to use these off-year elections to extrapolate to, presidential years or even midterm years, they're wrong. However, that doesn't mean they're not important. It doesn't mean that we can't win them. And that's why we need people out and voting in Florida, in Wisconsin, And in every other election that'll take place this year, we have Virginia, we have New Jersey, you have certain races in New York City, in Pennsylvania, there's going to be a Supreme Court race later this year. I think it's arguably we're going to be more likely to be favored in that one, but it's far from a done deal. But you look at this, you gotta make up ground. You gotta flip possibly some voters who voted for Janet in 23. I think there's going to be maybe a few percent of that million that could end up voting for Shamil, and he's going to need to turn out a decent amount of voters, not a ridiculous amount, but 150,000 plus voters who did not vote in 2023. They're going to have to show up. And if they do show up and Republicans have an upset, that would be a massive victory, not necessarily for Donald Trump or for the state of Wisconsin, but for the future of the country as a whole. Because what it proves is that in a Rust Belt state and an off-year election, when people got their act together, they were able to go out and deliver a victory for their side. We kind of, I guess you could say, saw it in 2019. There was an election, technically, where the Republicans won. It was a special election, Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, but it had a total turnout of like 1.1 or 1.2 million. That's the amount of votes that it's going to take to win the state this time. And by the way, I don't think that election determined the outcome of the court. You had a judge running who had a very strong resume, very strong candidate compared to a weak liberal candidate, and turnout was just supercharged in the WOW counties for Hagedorn, I think was his name, and he was able to go out there and win easily. So either way, this time around, it's going to be different. But you see a lot of this yellow, like counties like Jackson County. This county voted overwhelmingly for Trump. Portage County, that still stays blue. That's like the white whale for Republicans in the state of Wisconsin. But you look at a lot of these counties like Dunn County, Pierce County, Vernon, Crawford. Ironically enough, Crawford is the name of the liberal candidate. Grant County, Lafayette County. A lot of these counties surrounding Madison, Columbia, Sauk. These are all counties that voted for Donald Trump, but still the Democrat they've been winning them decisively in these special elections, these off-year elections. And it's not all persuasion. A tiny amount of it might be persuasion. A lot of it is turnout. And you need to max out your turnout among the white working class voter base. If you want to win a state like Wisconsin, you got to give these people a reason to turn out as a party. And you need to make sure that just like in the Deep South, they're voting more actively, because they vote very actively in Georgia, even Florida, where you have a robust party, but not in a state like Wisconsin. And I found this tidbit interesting because you do have this difference in the white working class demographic. But here's the state of Wisconsin, a map of the state of Wisconsin. I could pull this up. If white working class voters in Wisconsin voted the same way they vote in Georgia, it would be an R+20 state, which is insane. Because this does not even alter any other demographic in the way they vote in the state. This is just white working class voters in the state of Wisconsin. And it's like the messaging from the Republican Party, it's a gold mine. I'm not saying they'd be able to win all of them, because you do have this like cultural divide. But if you max out your turnout and you manage to flip some voters over time in that demographic, then you are sitting on a gold mine. You wouldn't lose a state like Wisconsin. You wouldn't lose a state like Michigan. You wouldn't even lose a state like Pennsylvania. But they don't really they don't fully get it. Trump gets it better, I feel like. And that's true. I think there's only so much you can really do. I don't think you're going to have Wisconsin, because you have different cultural demography, different issues of importance. But if you navigate the topics of the state better, and if you have a competent state party that has an apparatus that can turn out voters, then you're going to do great. It was built in Georgia. Even. It's not there anymore for the Democrats, but Stacey Abrams, of all people, she had the Abrams machine, and she was able to, for like 4 years, make Georgia a state that was more favorable to Democrats, and it's still trending that way. I'm not saying Republicans can't win it in 26 or 28, but it is trending that way. But still, like, that machine is gone. It's going to be easier for Republicans now, because the state level politics side of it has effectively gutted the machine, which would take advantage of a lot of these election laws and stuff like that would benefit Democrats, basically bribing people to stay in line. And then they said, oh, you're starving people in line. This is horrible if you didn't want people to be able to bribe people to like stay in line for hours. It's like you shouldn't have people in line waiting to vote for hours anyways in the first place, especially when you have all this early voting at your disposal, which is still there and which Republicans have used to their advantage. But it's like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Republicans should be doing better in these states, although it is true you have a lot of like older voters that are just so set in their ways. That's why you have like the boomers are more liberal than the zoomers, even though they still lean right and both lean right. But like the younger zoomers are voting more Republican in a state like Wisconsin. And you look at like the older like millennials and then you look at like the boomers, it's a different dichotomy. Obviously, Generation X is very Republican, but still you have a lot of older voters that have just been set in their ways. They just don't get it. They buy the resist lib slop. Oh, Blumph, Russia, evil, NPC talking points, Trump derangement syndrome. And they're set in their ways, and that's the way it is. That's the way it's been. Some of them might be flippable, but it's like, if you're not awake now, I don't know what exactly would. But as future generations come in and they're more Republican in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, should allow these states to be competitive, if not red-leaning, depending on how the national electorate ends up in the future. But you are kind of seeing this whole dynamic play itself out where you got to max out your turnout, even if you go back to baseline, even if we reset the values, but white working class turnout is just as high as, whites with at least a 4-year degree, then that still swings the state from, obviously they were using 2020 results, but that would swing the state like 3 percentage points to the right if you had just a 10% uptick. And that assumed that you wouldn't even get, like if you even just edited the totals to like the 2024 crosstabs, demographics, whatever, then Trump would win. Trump would have had a rightward shift in the state by like 5 points off of that alone. So there's a lot of voters to work with, a lot of people that don't show up. If we had higher turnout overall, we'd be more likely to win these elections. But still, it's good that you have a higher turnout than you had in 2023. It's going to be, in my opinion, a relatively close race, and we can work with that. They say 90% chance on Polymarket, the liberals are going to win it. I'm not ready to go there. I think Schimmel is undervalued. That's why I placed a bet on Brad Schimmel. Not going to tell everybody else they should spend all their money on this guy. I don't think it's good to gamble large amounts of money. But if you think it's a good investment for like a small portion, if somebody did that, I'd say, okay, I really see where they're coming from. The ROI is good if it's like 10%. I think it's higher than 10. Even if it's 30, it's still a good return on investment if you're willing to wager just a small amount because you're going to get, like 10 times the benefit? I don't see a problem there. But either way, it's like, yeah, you look at Elon Musk, he's getting involved. This is a crucial election. And then you have Florida. Democrats are going to try to pick off a House seat. I don't think they're going to get there, but you see polls. Randy Fine's in trouble. In my opinion, he's a weak candidate, but people need to get out and vote anyways because you don't want to lose the House. Fine can be primaried in 2 years. Donald Trump's agenda, this is like the only time to get it passed through. Fine and Trump get along. I'm not a big fan of Fine, but it's not like he's going to actively be able to be like some massive backstabber. And if he's just a nuisance, as he is currently, then he could be primaried out easily and it wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be much of an issue at all. So either way, there is a lot that is on the table here, and we need to make sure that people get out and vote. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty much the gist of the monologue today. I don't really have anything else for you guys besides getting to your super chats. I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot about this type of stuff. We have 8 out of our 30 super chats within the goal. Remember, guys, it is $5 or more super chats will help us get there. If it's like below that, it technically doesn't count towards the goal. The goal is 30. We need everybody to be, I guess you would say, pitching in to hit the goal. If you guys want to see me hit the goal so we could look at regular chat at the end of the stream and keep the stream going. So if you guys want to super chat, feel free. But we have 22 super chats left till we hit the goal. Teal or above So we're going to start off with Johnny Heartdog here. Actually, let me update real quick the lower third here. There we go. Perfect. All right, and let me make sure the screen isn't like just blacked out here. Yeah, let's leave it on. Let's leave it on the Wisconsin map that looks good. If we can. There we go. I don't know what happened to the screen. It just froze for a second, but there we go. Johnny Heartdog for 5 says, I don't know what to make with the tension between Putin and Trump. Well, this is called a negotiation that they're doing because Donald Trump is very harsh towards Zelensky. The media yells at the top of their lungs, he's just railroading our ally, which it's like, do we owe Ukraine anything? Do we? Seriously? No. But regardless, it's kind of like the mindset they're in. The other superpowers of the world have been gaining ground on us because they view nations not as allies or adversaries. They view them as vessels. If you're going to be a nation that is going to stand strong, that is going to, just be the king of the world stage, that's how you're going to operate. Nations have to fear you, not just love taking advantage of you, as they've been doing for quite some time. That's when Donald Trump comes in. But that's besides the point. Trump is not pro-Putin. That's the other flip side, because the media, because they understand that Trump is not going to just have this approach where Ukraine is always right and they can take advantage of us, and Trump's going to play hardball with them too to get what we need out of them, because like I said, he's viewing them as vessels, not as nations that can do whatever they want to us, because Trump takes the alpha approach, not the beta approach on the world stage in terms of representing America. Now, when it comes to Putin, Trump is also going to be tough with Putin because Trump understands that Russia is, they're not our friend either. They're an adversary. It'd be better to get along with them than to, try to, launch a regime change war in Russia or whatever that the Russian people don't even want. Of course, they'll say it's because of propaganda or something. But regardless, we've seen that movie play out in the Middle East. It has not gone well, whether you want to blame propaganda or not. Eastern European nations, they like this type of leadership. They always do. It's their culture. It's even Ukraine. Zelensky, you think Zelensky's not some sort of dictator? They get mad about Trump when he says it, but the guy cancels elections. And he probably would lose. The polls would say he'd lose if he had one. His approval rating is not the highest. May not be at 4%, but it's not the highest. But the bottom line is that Donald Trump wants to make a deal, and he's going to have to be harsh towards Putin as well. And that's kind of the main takeaway with Donald Trump and this whole Putin thing, because he's told Putin in the past, the media doesn't talk about it. It's not convenient for their narrative that Trump loves Putin or whatever. But he said, if you go into Ukraine, he said this during the first term. He said, we'll bomb Moscow. Now, obviously, you could say it's a bluff or whatever, but it's true. The bottom line is that Donald Trump is somebody that is unpredictable on the world stage, and people are going to fear him, and it's worked out for him, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to be mean to Zelensky at times. Big deal. He should be able to handle it. Same thing goes for Putin. And, we got to do what we can do to put America first. Our interests are not Russia's interests. Our interests are obviously also not Ukraine's interests. That's where a lot of people happen to get it wrong. So Chase M says, do you think the Florida Republican candidates will win? I do. I think that Fine's race is too close for comfort. I think he still wins by double digits. I really do. M Skywalker 07 says, I'm a little concerned about Florida's 6th district. We need Randy Fine to win and later primary him in 26. I agree. The guy's a blowhard. He yells at his own constituents. He looks like a slob. He does. And it's like, some people will say that's not fair. You can't say that about his looks. But it's like, if you can't take care of yourself, how do I expect you to take care of your district? And it's that simple. You have this guy, he's like Peter Griffin mixed with Chris Christie. He yells at people. He's weak on immigration. His takes on the war in the Middle East have been a little bit unhinged. It's one thing to support aside. Obviously, most of Congress supports Israel. We understand that. But this guy's like out there, laughing at pictures of like dead children and rubble. And that's not something that should ever be acceptable. You could say it's war. You could say, this is all Hamas's fault or whatever. And you would largely be correct. But at the end of the day, celebrating the worst aspects of war, you can't do that. You can't. It's grotesque. And that's not the main reason why he's losing, because I doubt a lot of people have seen those tweets or those Facebook posts or whatever. But it just shows that he's just unhinged. He's just an unhinged guy. And people don't like him. They don't want to show up for him. Donald Trump endorsed him in part because if you look at what was going on with the whole primary, which, by the way, Fine was all in for DeSantis. And then he just realized DeSantis wasn't going to win. He switched to Trump. So I think Trump's paying him back for that. But it's like this guy, like the reason why he said he was backing Trump didn't even make sense, because it wasn't an issue where Trump and DeSantis really had a disagreement. And if anything, DeSantis would be more in line with his take than Trump. But the whole thing is just ridiculous. The guy's not a strong candidate. That's my main takeaway. So let me see. Samuel Harrison says, why did Putin betray Trump? Well, in terms of betraying, I don't know what exactly you mean by that. What do you mean about the betrayal? But either way, if Putin is not going to agree with Trump's demands, Trump is going to put his foot down. Trump wants an end to the war, but he's not going to get walked over by one side or another. This is what I've said from the beginning, and I'll keep the same energy, whether it's talking about Zelensky or talking about Putin, because they both have their flaws, they both have their own interests, and they both are a little untrustworthy, I guess you could say. And Trump is going to have to be the adult in the room and handle it. 12 says, don't ask people to vote for Randy Fine. Well, I have no choice, because look, Fine sucks, and you could talk about 2026, but he already won the primary. I told people not to vote in the primary. This is an election that is crucial because you have a House majority that is super slim. Is Fine kind of like a scumbag type of guy? I think he is. But it's a very important thing for people to get out and vote. Now, his underperformance is going to cause somebody to run against him in a primary, and I'm going to probably support his challenger come 2026. But as for right now, yeah, Fine has to win. It's important that we have the House majority. We pad the House majority. And, maybe given the whole Signalgate thing, the mistake was Trump putting Waltz in there in the first place. He's probably, one of the hires this time around that I was always a little skeptical of. Obviously, I get it. There's not a lot to choose from. A lot of neocons out there, a lot of backstabbers. There's far less than there were in term one. Doesn't mean term two is entirely without them. But it's interesting how he, of all people, causes the left-wing journalist who has manufactured all of these hoaxes against Donald Trump, and somehow he ends up in a group chat where they're discussing foreign policy plans, not full-on war plan, top secret stuff, but stuff that nobody should really have access to except 5 people. And somehow Mike Waltz adds a journalist. Was he hacked? We don't know, but a journalist who hates Donald Trump gets in that group chat somehow. Was that intentional? If it was intentional, what was it even trying to accomplish? Because it wasn't a distraction. I don't know. The whole thing's a bit strange to me. The whole thing is a bit strange. Getting better at muting the microphone, because I understand it can make noise when I drink, but yeah, in terms of that, it's Fine has to win. I don't like him, but it's a necessary evil sort of thing. Tom Addo says Fine will win based on the early vote data, but I don't know what the exact margin will be. Thinking of betting on Fine by 10 to 15 and 3 to 5 for Crawford. I wouldn't oppose that being somewhere in the realm of possibility. I still think we need to, Crawford is favored. I hate to tell it to people, but I don't think it's unwinnable. I don't say that to demoralize people. They need to get out and vote. We've really closed the gap in the early vote. We need to do better. People can talk about a moral victory. They could talk about a lot of things. There's no moral victories in politics, but we want to make sure it's close. We hopefully win. And this is an election that all the metrics you look at, you could say this should be stacked against you. This is an election where you're going to be down a lot of your magic, your secret sauce per se. You're going to be down your coalition, the hidden Trump coalition. Usually you're going to be working at a disadvantage. It's like pulling teeth getting these people to vote. If they actually vote enough to keep this state really close, in a state where the low propensity electorate is very, very favorable to the high propensity electorate is very favorable to the Democrats. This election, based on turnout, should be favorable to the Democrats. If you're able to compete, it's impressive. If you're able to win, it's like, let's go. So we need people voting. I don't think that we're DOA. I think it's very important, and the math is there for us to win, but we just got to turn out enough people, and hopefully we can cross that finish line. Hopefully, but we're not there yet. But Tuesday, we need people showing up on Tuesday. Olivia Williams says, why have black Republicans done so badly? Walker, Gibbs, Robinson, among others. Picking DEI candidates is not a recipe to win, hence why Donalds isn't good. Well, first of all, Donalds is in Florida. Florida is not a competitive state. He will win easily. Second of all, Walker was a bad candidate because he had domestic abuse scandals. Robinson, we don't have to get on the whole Robinson stuff, but there were a lot of skeletons in his closet. We should have hoped, in the primary, hopefully in an alternative reality, that would have came out and we would have been able to choose a different candidate. But Robinson, Walker, and Gibbs actually wasn't even that much of an underperformer. I believe he outran Dixon in that district. It was just a very blue district, and did a lot better comparatively to a lot of the less controversial House Republican candidates in the state, given the circumstances, when you look at how much they underperformed or overperformed by. So there's that. But Donalds is not a candidate that is, in my opinion, being touted because of his DEI or whatever. Now, you could be right saying that Republicans in the electorate of the primary, they'd be more inclined to gloss over certain things about a candidate because, this candidate is a minority candidate, so they'll get more of the minority vote, and they almost never do, by the way. But it's like Donalds is different. And there's plenty of examples you could point to of strong Republican candidates who are black and overperform. You could look at John James, for example. You could look at even Byron Donalds himself running for his congressional races in Florida. So I think it depends on the candidate in terms of how strong they are. Are some people touted by certain people because they feel like, it's like a signal, like, we'll run a black candidate, and then we're not going to be called racist, and then they still call the black guy a white supremacist for some reason or another. They use their mental gymnastics to do that. Of course they do. So it's a mixed bag on that front because, you do have Republicans. They'll sometimes prop up candidates who aren't strong because of identity issues. And it's like right-wing woke type of stuff, not like what some crazy pseudo-intellectual people on the internet say, but it's actual woke behavior coming from Republicans. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that every instance of somebody who is, propped up as a candidate, it's going to be, because this guy happens to be black. Byron Donalds is propped up because he is intelligent, he is articulate, and he goes on these news shows and will eviscerate these Democrats. That's a large reason why. Are there some people who might prop him up and say, I like him, and he'll, how the Democrats going to deal with this guy? They're not going to call him racist. I'm sure some people think that, but still, they still, ironically enough, have called Byron Donalds a segregationist, a white supremacist, all these names, because these people that we're dealing with are not rational people. They're crazy people, and that's going to happen anyway. So I don't think that's why we should prop up candidates. I've been very clear about that. But at the same time, Donalds is a good candidate, and I'm not saying you can't prop up candidates that happen to be of different ethnic groups because some candidates in that ethnic group have underperformed. Christina Caramo is another example that could fit in that list, and that would be true. She was a mess, and she destroyed the Michigan Republican Party even more than it already was destroyed. But thankfully, the coup worked. It's one of those things where I said, yeah, you need new leadership. This isn't working. Trump's not going to win Michigan if you don't launch a coup. And I don't know, maybe he won so much that he would have won anyways, but yeah, it's important. It's very important that you have a competent state party, and it's not perfect, but still, it's better than it was. Patrick says, I live in Minnesota, have tried to reach out to Wisconsin voters to vote, but realized I have no friends there because Wisconsin sucks. Well, you could do there's Turning Point apps, the Early Vote Action app. There's plenty of apps people can use to actually, go out there and find voters and contact voters. So we need to make sure that we ramp up our own ground game, because that's how we turn low propensity coalitions into high propensity coalitions. It is. I mean, I understand that we have like a gold mine for presidential years. It kind of can work in some places in midterm years, but these like special elections, we're getting decimated. It's a problem, but we can do more and we need to do more so we can protect our majority. XJ Cherokee Bear says Trump should have held a rally in Wisconsin. Yeah, well, Musk did. I mean, Trump is busy. You could make the case he should have. It depends on how close the final margin ends up being. Trump also understands that these things usually don't go our way. And if we lose by like 6, then they're going to be like, oh, look, Trump went and rallied. And it's like a PR crisis for Trump, which isn't fair in my opinion. But that's how it works. So I think Elon getting in there is important. Also doesn't nationalize it as much, which could be good. Tucson PaleoCon for $20 says it's fat fella season. Put your life savings in fat coin to get your bread up, playa. Yeah, I think I've seen what that references, those Twitter videos, and yeah, those are funny. That's like the most 2025 thing you could think of. It's politically incorrect. It's objectively funny. It's AI generated. It promotes a meme coin. It's like if 2025 was like, personified in any sort of like video, those would be them. But yeah, appreciate the super chat. LynRX52 for $100. That's a lot. Appreciate that super chat. Lynn saying, been sharing Wisconsin and Florida info daily, especially Wisconsin. Thank you for staying on special elections. Keep up the great work. Haven't chipped in lately, so here you go. Well, I appreciate it, and it is important that people get involved. And there's many ways to do it, but I promoted this before the election. I think we played a big role in helping Trump win because it's a domino effect. We make a video, gets 100,000 views telling people how to volunteer. Let's say only like 100 people out of the 100,000 end up doing it. They still reach 10,000 voters combined. That's a lot of people that they reach who otherwise weren't going to vote. So again, it's all part of the equation, and we need people doing it. M Skywalker 07 says the problem is the GOP and RNC haven't done shit and haven't funded anything. Excuse the language, but we're just reading it verbatim. Only Scott Pressler is doing the heavy lifting. Well, he's not the only one, but a lot of people look at Scott Pressler doing what he's doing, and they think, oh, this is enough. He's saving the Republican Party in Pennsylvania. And it's like, he does some good work. Registering voters is important. All this stuff is important. But the main takeaway is that he's not enough. He's just one person. We need more people doing. You need thousands. The left has a lot. Now, they stopped using them as much because they realized that the more voters they would register, the more they'd vote Republican, even if they were in communities that don't vote Republican. Like if they were registering, remember they were registering Hispanics in South Texas saying, we're going to flip it blue. And then all these Tejano voters, families have been here for hundreds of years in Texas, they all voted Republican. It wasn't just vote flipping. It was finding new voters, and they all ended up just being a reliably red voting bloc. And that's partially why Texas is now a solid red state again. It kind of flew close to the sun, but it flew back a little bit. And, the Democrats really dropped the ball there, but that's besides the point. The point is we need a lot of people out and volunteering if they can. I know there's a lot of people that, they work long hours, they can't do it. That's one thing. And if you can afford to donate to the efforts, then that would be your job. But if you have all the time in the world, you got to make sure you're utilizing it. If you want to see Donald Trump's agenda be passed for another couple years, whether it's the midterms or you want his legacy to live on come 2028, even if you're only in politics for Trump, these elections all matter. I mean, they really do. This is a movement. It's about defeating evil and failed policies within a broken system. Let's see. 12 says, my true fear is Fine doesn't get primaried. Well, we could work on that. If he's going to underperform, there's already going to be talks. So let's see. Eric from Wisconsin for 10 says, thank you for talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. We in Wisconsin need Schimmel to win to save our state. Well, thank you for the super chat, and it is 100% accurate. And by the way, guys, we're 18 super chats, teal color and above away from our goal. Now we're 17. So just a heads up, guys, if you want us to hit our goal on today's stream, we're 17 away. So Ian Wenger says, I voted and I don't want to give up on my state. Well, there you go. And make sure you get everybody else voting too. M. Skywalker 07 says, bring back the Kingdom of Jerusalem. What are your thoughts on the DRC wanting to sign a minerals deal with Trump for protection? That's the Democratic Republic of the Congo? I don't know. It would depend on what we would be giving them, what would we be getting. I'm not entirely sure. Secession Now says, have you taken any money from AIPAC? No, apparently not. I actually have not, believe it or not. I'm just a shill for free, as they say. But regardless, I get the joke. I get the joke because we get those allegations quite a bit. Galaxy 165 says, thoughts on Florida 1 and Jimmy Petronis. He'll win easily, but still get out and vote. Because look, the margin matters. If we if we run in line with Trump, it's like a mandate statement victory. So, don't take me saying we're going to win that district as, I don't have to. No, you have to vote. You always have to. Make sure you get out there and vote. Become a super voter. It's very easy to do. SoCal Populist for $5 says, hi, Rep, can we expect a minect from you soon? Myself and many others would be more than willing to pay $2,000 an hour to get your analysis and advice. Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but I'm not familiar with the service. Is that like one of these things where you pay somebody and they talk to you for money or something? Like that's definitely, I don't know. People could do that. You could join the website, join the Discord, ask me any question you want. It's $5 a month. I'm not going to charge $2,000 per hour to do it. I don't think anyone would do it if people want to cash at me $2,000, they're more than welcome to for a conversation. But otherwise, it's like, no. Well, people can join the Zoom call lottery that barely ever takes place on the website for $15 a month in the super tier. And by the way, speaking of the website, even today at redeaglepatriots.com, posted the weekly newsletter, posted a weekly exclusive video that you won't find on the channel. So we do an exclusive video almost every week, an exclusive article almost every week on the website for people that want exclusive content, want to support the channel further. Every month at redeaglepolitics.com, they can do so. Joshua says, Trump admin profiting for me, making hella money building a deportation facility. I don't know what this seems like a troll super chat, but thank you for the 5. BB says, predictions, Florida 6, Fine by 5 to 15, Petronis by 30 to 40. That's a little lofty, but hopefully. Wisconsin, Crawford by 5 to Schimmel by 2. Propensity is a bigger issue for specials in the Rust Belt. I definitely agree with that last point. I agree with the Fine margin. I think it'll be double digits. I think that Petronis wins by probably under 30, but over 20. I think that the range for the Crawford Schimmel race, the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, it could be a lot of things, and it does come down to propensity. It's 100% true. It's going to come down to propensity. So that part is non-negotiable. in any sort of analysis, by the way. So, Real Texan Politics says Wisconsin vote for Brad Schimmel, Brittany Kinzer, and yes on voter ID on Tuesday. Yeah, there's other stuff going on. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So, again, we're 16 super chats away from our goal. If we hit it, we hit it. If we don't hit it, we don't hit it, and that's okay. But if you guys want to help us hit it, make sure that you guys send a super chat 5 and above. Also, like the stream. Let's get to 300 likes on the stream. I know it's late. We've been doing late streams, but we will be live early on Tuesday. We will be live at 7, maybe a little bit after 7, after the polls close in Florida on Tuesday. We're going to be doing probably the longest live stream that we've done since the election, but I'm looking forward to it. We don't get too many of these like election night things, and definitely it's one of these off-year elections. It's a lot to there's a lot to take in. A lot of people, if the result doesn't go well, a lot of people are going to be unhappy. X will be unusable for quite some time, but regardless, we're trying to just make it, get as many people out to the polls as possible, so we can maybe win in an upset. And if we're able to do that, then that's huge. Then we get to claim victory. So if it's close and we lose, it's like, this is a mess. Hopefully, if Wisconsin redraws, you'll see a Texas counter and redraw. There's been rumors that could happen, or another state could do it. Ohio, I think, will, but I'm talking about another state besides Ohio. I'm not sure which state would do it, but Wisconsin, yeah, it's a mess what they're trying to do in Wisconsin for sure. They're trying to hold the court because they hold the court now. So this stuff would happen if this election wasn't taking place. So it's kind of a good opportunity that we have. So it's up for us to seize that opportunity to go out there and win that seat, to make sure we can flip the court back, get back the Wisconsin we had in the 2010s, and make sure we could put it on the path to being a very, very competitive to right-leaning state in the future, and make sure that the Democrats aren't going to be able to hold it. And that could dictate the House. It could dictate, future elections based on the election laws. So all of that matters. M. Skywalker 07 says, religious question, do you think the church will ever be united, Orthodox and Catholic? Well, I think it depends, because Orthodoxy is very segmented. And I'm not just talking about Eastern versus Western versus Oriental, because you have certain groups like, the Coptics and the Armenians. They tend to be very similar in theology to the Eastern Catholic rites. They're basically indistinguishable from the Eastern Catholic churches that are in the realm. But you have other forms of Orthodoxy that are into a little bit of weird stuff, like, the Ethiopians, who in some cases are even closer to like Mormons than other forms of Orthodoxy. So if there's going to be a reunification, certain sects that have the, Catholic view on the Trinity, they might be willing, although there probably would have to be some concessions that would come from the Vatican for them to join. But there's like other groups that it's a little bit of a far-fetched, thing for them to technically reunify the entire church. But some people want it to happen, and it possibly can, but there's just, there's definitely a lot of very subtle differences that the people that, really get it deep into the religious stuff, they're not going to be happy about the possibility of reunification. So there's that. So, yep, we got trolls in chat. They're spamming, and then they're going to yell at me for putting them in timeout and claim that I'm being paid to put them in timeout. That's hilarious. And it's like, no, I don't care what you're spamming. You're spamming. That's like the number one problem. But yeah, let's see. Doomsday Machine for 10 says, how would you rate the POTUS, GOP, and U.S. right now? How are we doing? Well, it depends. Because people are always talking about, Trump hasn't deported X amount of people, and it's true, he hasn't. But you're talking about being 2.5 months in. If you're 5 months in and you're not seeing an increase, the numbers in immigration dip. Of course, you're kind of grading on a curve. I think Trump's doing just fine. I'm not going to put a grade on it, but I think he's doing well. He's doing much of what he said he would do, or he's trying to. There are roadblocks. There are rogue justices. He's fighting every step of the way with them. But in terms of the grades for all three of them, I think that all of them you could say you can't grade them. It's like an incomplete because you're grading on a curve. But like so far, do they get a passing grade? Of course. Would I like to see more? Of course. Is that just on Trump? Of course not. There's plenty of people. It's not just on Trump. It's not even just on Mike Johnson. It's, you have a lot of these judges that are trying to block every step of the way the agenda. It's like, who elected these people? Of course, they're appointed. But it's like you have even the Supreme Court. They're, legislating against Trump. Roberts is a big, roadblock to Trump, and even some of Trump's own appointed justices aren't exactly doing the best job to back him in every step of the way, because obviously it's constitutional. They want to go out there and say that Trump is breaking the law because he wants to get rid of agencies not in the Constitution, and because of the fact that he wants to enact a law that's old, but it's before judicial review anyways. He should just keep enacting it, because judicial review was established by Marbury v. Madison in the 1790s, early 1800s, sometime around then. The Alien Enemies Act, to remove a lot of these criminals and these illegal aliens that Trump's trying to use, it's like that law's before judicial review, and you're saying Trump can't use the law because it's old. Then why don't you just you could light the Constitution on fire by that logic. It doesn't necessarily mean that a law being old means a law is unable to work, or it shouldn't be used, or it shouldn't be enacted. It doesn't make sense. These people have lost their minds trying to spite Trump, and the American public, as it stands now, is still firmly behind him, according to almost every single approval poll. And that's with, the tariff, seasickness, because a lot of people are like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So either way, Trump has this mandate to enact his agenda. And you have low-live judges, so-called judges, that are trying to sabotage him. And if he says something like, "He who saves the country doesn't violate any law," which is a very, very good quote, by the way, and it's true, they're trying to say he's subverting the Constitution. But the judges are subverting the Constitution. You think the original framers of the Constitution are going to look at this guy and say that he should have the power to block Donald Trump's agenda? Of course not. They're misusing, they're perverting the Constitution every step of the way. It's a major problem. And these people should probably even have the right to be removed from their posts. But that's a whole nother discussion. A lot of people at the time, they couldn't see it coming. The Constitution, even the amendment process, if the founders knew what the state of the country was now, would have been written a lot differently. And that's true. You're not supposed to say that, especially on the right. You're not supposed to say anything bad about the founders or the Constitution, but it's not a perfect document because it couldn't stand the test of time. It was perfect in the sense that, as John Adams said, it was for a moral people, a religious people. You have liberty because the people support order. The people now don't support order. You have a disorderly population. You have an immoral population. You have a non-religious population. And the Constitution is not written for that. It was not. And you have to look at original intent when you look at the Constitution. And you have to understand that there are loopholes, because the left is perverting it. There's other ways to use loopholes as well, just like with the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship, etc. And that's the way it goes. So let's see. I think that's the final super chat. So yeah, we have not reached the goal quite yet. We'll go for another 10, 12 minutes. If there's anything else you guys want to have in the mix, feel free to send it in. We could even lower the goal. We'll lower the goal to 20, just because I know it's late. I don't think we're going to have this massive push like we had on the last stream to reach the goal. But we did definitely get 30 of any color, or we got close to it, so that's good. So there's that. But there is a lot of talk about a third term, because Trump did say, or he was asked about a third term. He said he'd consider running. I think it's more of an own the libs type of thing. I don't know if 82-year-old Trump wants to run for a third term. I think if he was younger, it's something that would have to be discussed for sure. You have 2 non-contiguous terms. If anybody would deserve it, it would be him. Definitely, I think he could win a third term, depending on the state of the country. But, is he really going to want to be president until he's 86, or does he want to just cement his legacy, go out on top, be a legend, which he is, objectively? I mean, this guy survived so much, not just literal bullets to the head, to the side of the head, but he survived all this lawfare, all these things. Nobody that we can think of going back 100 plus years that has occupied the office could have done what Donald Trump has done. He is an incredible human being objectively. This isn't said in terms of support of him, support of his agenda. This is an objective position. There's very few people that can have that story arc. I think a lot of people on the left, if they're going to be honest with themselves, which they're not because they're on the left, but if they're going to be honest with themselves in a hypothetical realm where they can be, then they would say the same thing because it is true. And the day the left finds a Trump, I don't think they will, but if they want to win in 2028, they're going to have to find one. And I don't see a candidate that they could put out there that could be that Trump. Now, it doesn't mean they can't win 2028, but it's going to take a lot for them to. Because the state of the country is one thing, and that matters, but every election is going to be close. We understand that. And it's like the Democrats are so unpalatable. And their party approval rating, it's like they want to laugh at Trump for having a 50% approval rating or somewhere in that realm, but then their approval rating is 30% as a party on a good day, and they want to lecture Donald Trump about his approval rating or how the American people view him. It's not just a candidate thing. It's not even Kamala. They're all Kamalas. Every single one of them is a Kamala. Many of them are worse than Kamala, believe it or not. You have a party full of just crazy, unlikable, unpalatable people. They can't win younger voters. They can't win men. They're bleeding support from younger minority voters. They can turn it around, but they're not going to be able to do that until they have a newly reinvented party. And as things stand today, I don't know. I just don't know. I just can't see it. I mean, they could get there one day and maybe they will find a way to win 28. But, I'm not telling people we're going to coast, but like the Senate, they're going to be screwed in. It would take a miracle for them to even retain the Senate again between now and 2040. M. Skywalker 07 says, thoughts on Dems asking Hegseth to resign, but when Austin caused the death of 13 Americans in Afghanistan, the media had no calls for him to resign. Exactly. Like, we know that. The media, it doesn't matter. Like, they're hypocritical. They're biased. We get it. The good thing is that they're losing support by the day. And we can have that in our corner as a sign of hope, a sign of promise, because people have been willing to call them out. And you actually have a fair social media platform. Thank you. Elon, by the way, is trying to get Brad Schimmel the victory in the state of Wisconsin. So there's that. But yeah, it is true though. If you did repeal the 22nd Amendment, which it's not going to happen, even if Trump found a way to run for a third term, I don't think he's going to. I think it's mostly jargon, trolling, own the libs type of stuff. But you could have this hypothetical where it would be Trump versus Obama, because Obama would be eligible by that same logic to run. I'm not saying he'd want to, but that would be something. Now, I do think he wouldn't be able to retain much of his original coalition. He probably would win voters who never voted for him. I think he'd really struggle with younger voters. I really do. He would lose even a great chunk of his black support against Trump in a hypothetical matchup, especially his antics on the campaign trail with Kamala. That was like a new low. It was bad enough with Hillary, but with Kamala Harris, that was a new low. Nobody cared. Nobody went to his events. I mean, it was an entirely different vibe shift. At least with Hillary Clinton, he could draw a crowd. With Kamala, he couldn't draw a crowd. You know, you probably had the same people. They'd bust every single rally, whatever. And it was all fake. It was all fake. It was all astroturfed. Nobody believed it at the time. If you believed it at the time, you're a sucker. Yeah, I don't care what side you're on. It's okay. It's okay to admit to be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. But anybody who believed that was just a sucker. Anyone who thought response bias wasn't real was a sucker. Like they were. Maybe you wanted to be cautious. I get it. I'm not saying that I wasn't even cautious, but this whole notion of, oh, Trump is like going to lose because they replaced Biden with Kamala. It's like, yeah, Biden in that current state was weaker. We get that. But I think at the start of the year, people would have been begging to run against Kamala. Now, she was in the perfect position because she didn't have enough time. And people said that's why she lost. No, that's why it was even that close. Because the more people got acquainted with her, the less they liked her. By the end, they were like having to put her in the basement again, basically. It was a disaster. The Videomaker 2341 says, not going to lie, the right's outrage of Miaris' Ramadan tweet is cherry-picked outrage. They say he's forgetting the U.S.'s Christian heritage, but he also posted Hanukkah tweets, but nowhere near the outrage. Yeah, I don't think it's that. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, in my opinion. I don't think there's very many Muslims in Virginia where it's kind of an odd tweet. But then I looked into it, and there's more than I thought there were. There's still not a lot of them. Are you going to post a tweet for Hindu celebrations? Because I think there's more Hindus in Virginia than Muslims. Are you going to post a tweet? Like, where do you draw the line? Exactly. Like, it's just one of those things where, people are going to debate that. Is it somewhat selective? Is it the biggest deal in the world? No. It's not like the RNC having that bizarre Sikh prayer that just is like turning heads. Like, what the hell's going on? What percentage of the population is Sikh? Like, the fake outrage was people saying that this is like a new phenomenon when it happened at 2016's RNC, it happened at 2020's RNC. I'm not saying it's not strange, panderous. It's not winning voters over. It's not. You have a core constituency you're better off pandering to. And I don't mean pandering in a bad way, but it's not the biggest deal, in my opinion. But people are going to speak about it because they see it as like, oh, he's like placating a very slim portion of the population that, it's like, why even bring it up? But either way, it's not. I agree, it's not the biggest deal. It's not the biggest deal in the end of the world. M. Skywalker 07 says, what specific bills do you want Congress to pass? Well, it's more about the funding, in my opinion, more funding for deportations, more funding for a border wall. I would like to see more. Obviously, they're going to have to extend the tax cuts. They're going to have to abolish taxes on tips, taxes on Social Security. If they do that, it's going to be a great thing, in my opinion. Orange Space Monkey sent a donation helping us hit our goal. We hit 20, so we hit one of the goals, but we're 9 short of the original. But thank you, Orange Space Monkey. Ash K2 says, On Point Politics, who always overestimates Republicans, is predicting a Dem win in Wisconsin. Also, Daily Wire going bankrupt. Good riddance. They were useless. Well, I don't know about useless. I don't really have a dog in that whole fight. Like, I will say that they did not try to keep several hosts that they had that kept the network running. And as a result, that's kind of a sign of a business that if you're driving away top talent, even if there are ideological disagreements, I think they handled them poorly. I really do. You can criticize a lot of things that Candace Owens has said. I think her initial statements that Ben Shapiro called disgraceful were not worthy of termination. And she's somebody that's spiteful. Her entire career was built off of spite. She was very much a hardcore liberal until they called her out for like a doxing website. Then she becomes a conservative overnight. So, she goes to war with Ben Shapiro, and then overnight she's trying to fly so close to the sun without like touching it on like the whole like Israel stuff and the J-spurging and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, so I see what you're doing. But Ben could have handled it better and differently, so it wouldn't have really gone to that. And the whole Brett Cooper thing, it's like you couldn't keep her. You tied her into this contract. They own the channel. And people don't like these contracts. They don't like these sort of things, and they're going to want out. I don't know what the whole disagreement was behind the scenes. A lot of people have their theories, but I don't have like the full rundown. And it's like, yeah, you got to keep your top talent. If you can't find a way to keep your top talent, you're going to lose people. Now, are they going to probably be doing just fine? Yeah. I don't think Jeremy Boring was that great of a CEO. Now that he's gone, maybe there's hope for the network. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not saying it's like massive hope, but I do think you could make an argument they've been poorly run in certain aspects. They spent way too much time and money on things like these movies that nobody ever sees except right-wingers. And it's like maybe some of like the ideology, like documentary things were one thing, but like they did this, like they did a movie, like an actual like movie about like men and women's. It's like nobody's seeing this except die-hard, like Daily Wire fan people. Like a lot of the right is laughing at them. Like this whole, like the whole cartoon thing they did. It's like Extreme Dollar Store, King of the Hill. Like nobody's going to watch that. Nobody watched it. And a lot of people watched it to make fun of it. And it's like you want to make art and you want to promote right-wingers making art. I agree. You can't do it that's like a level that's so in your face. That's not how the left built themselves up to the point where they could do it so in your face. It has to be subtle. It has to be about the themes. They didn't handle it well. They didn't manage it well. And look what's happened to their network as a result. So, a lot of money was wasted. I like some people over there. I don't hate the network, but I do think they could have done a lot differently. I agree with that 100%. Now, as for on-point politics prediction in Wisconsin, I disagree with his prediction. I think it's too lofty for Crawford. But the main reason why I disagree, and I like on point, but I disagree with the county map because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It really just doesn't. It's a little bit all over the place. I don't know what he's using to model it. I'd be shocked if it turned out right, but either way, I'm not basing it on that. I'm basing it as somebody who pretty much nailed Wisconsin. And I still think Crawford is probably going to win, which is why people need to vote, because I don't think she's guaranteed to win. But it's going to be closer than that. It'll be within 5. So there's that. So M Skywalker 07 for 10 says, thoughts on Tim Walz wanting to endorse DEI will be so easy in 28 when conservatives win. Well, if you want to embrace policies like that, you're going to lose. Nobody supports DEI. When it's explained to them. What is DEI? It's a lot of buzzwords. It's 3 buzzwords in a row. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. So basically it's affirmative action. They don't want to use affirmative action, so they say DEI because they know affirmative action is not popular. And DEI is also becoming unpopular. But what it is you're taking things and you're handing them to people that didn't earn them. Hence DEI also could mean didn't earn it. When you get rid of air traffic controller requirements, you get rid of the test and you replace it with a tiny questionnaire that most people can pass just so you can then go and recruit at like HBCUs that have very low ranks to try to make a little bit of a different looking work environment. Then what you're doing is you're weakening. You need the strongest people for the positions. That's all you need. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's got to be all white or all Asian, or all whatever. But you need the qualified people, the most qualified people possible. And just because certain groups aren't scoring as high, well, that doesn't mean that you have to lower requirements for everybody else, because you're just going to weaken society for the sake of, it looks different. And it's like, why not try to make sure that you can do what you can do to get people qualified and legitimately qualified that might happen to not have access to opportunities or whatever, like opportunity zones, for example. And that goes also in the white working class communities. It's not just a race thing, but you need people that are capable of doing the job of the highest requirements for a job like that. And if they want to run on that, So, we're going to have people looking different. They're going to get decimated. There's a reason why they ran from it. And it still wasn't enough. And now they want to run on it? I really sincerely hope they do. I hope they do. Let's see. The video maker 2341 says, how do you think Schimmel does in Wisconsin or in WOW? Do you think he does well there for a Republican in recent times? I think he might be one of the last Republicans to get well, I don't know if he's getting pre-Trump levels. I don't think he needs to. I think he just needs to get high turnout. That's all I'm asking. It could be a 60-40 win in Waukesha County, but if that margin, because if you want to look at, let's go back and let's look at 2023. It was 58-42, and it was not even a 30,000 vote win. He needs to win that county by 50, 60,000 votes, somewhere in that ballpark, if turnout's going to be a little higher. It's more about driving the turnout more so than the percentages, and he's going to have to do well. Washington County's got to win that by 25,000. Ozaukee County's probably going to need to win it by like 4,000. I think he can. I think he's a stronger candidate than Dan Kelly. I don't think it's particularly close. There's an effort on the Republican side. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but we got to try. That's all I'm going to say. M. Skywalker 07 says, I know we talked about our politics, but thoughts on Canada's election and who you want to win? Well, it would be better for Canada if they had Pierre, the conservative. I know he's not like perfect, but it would be better than the current leadership. But, they get rid of Trudeau, liberal numbers go up. And obviously the whole Trump thing, they've been working on that. And then Pierre's kind of throwing Trump under the bus too much in the other hand, and he thinks he could like outflank the liberals. And I get he has to a little extent, but it's not working at like the level that he's doing it. He's not like taking like the high road. He's like getting in the mud, and he's attacking Trump more than he's attacking Carney. And that's also causing him to, suffer. He was a lock, and now he's probably not going to win. So there's a long way to go. But it's a mix of those two things. It's not all Trump, and it's not all, they replaced Trudeau. But the DNP Greens and Quebecois have lost like 20 points directly to the Liberals, in part because, they decided to replace their leader with somebody not named Justin Trudeau. And most Canadians are liberal, and they're getting behind the Liberals, and they're leaving the conservatives in the dust. And the whole Trump thing and the tariffs, they're also like, it's like a liberal form of like, Trump bad, like globalist nationalism that is causing certain Canadians to just say, yeah, screw what's going on in our own country. Yeah, we want to spite Trump more than we love our own country. Yeah, Canada deserves what they have coming to them. I'm sorry if I have any Canadian viewers. I'm sure we have a couple. But I think it's ridiculous how you do have people that will base their votes on, Trump bad, even though it's not in our country. Therefore, we need to elect somebody who's going to carry on the failed policies of Trudeau that we hate. So that's it. The video maker says, do you think Kinzer wins her superintendent race in Wisconsin? Maybe, yeah. I think it's, again, not more nonpartisan. I think there's more crossover appeal there. I think that I've read that Kinzer is favored, so I could be wrong. But yeah, it's just insanity. Canada is not a rational nation. They're just not. A lot of these Western Europe, it's like Reddit. It's like if Reddit was a country. And like, do you actually expect actual leadership there, or do you expect a lot of stupidity? It's a lot of stupidity. Just like not every Redditor is stupid. Not every Canadian is either. But there's a lot of overlap there. It's a mess. It really is. It's like if Minneapolis's metro was a nation. That'd be Canada. Like Hennepin County was an entire country. That's Canada. So, yeah, someone said I have a lot of Australian viewers. I know I do. We do have a lot of Australian viewers. So, yeah, it's a mess what's going on, guys. It is a big mess. But Tuesday, we'll be back. We'll be live Tuesday night early. So that would be like 7 o'clock Eastern time. covering the results out of Florida, out of Wisconsin. The first big election night, the first mega stream we'll be doing since November. So hopefully we get a lot of people here, and hopefully the stream works this time. I think it's going to, because the election night stream, we had all kinds of problems. We had a faulty Ethernet cable that's been fixed. So things should be smooth sailing for sure. But we have a couple more super chats here. We're almost at the original goal, guys. We could still hit it. We're 4 away. M Skywalker 07 says, if we annex Greenland, should we have it as a state or territory? Well, it's not big enough to be a state, so it's going to be a territory. It'd be very liberal unless a lot of people move up there, which could make it a state, and it could make it a red state, but we're not there yet. Tom Addo says, Canada violated the USMCA with tariffs and digital service tax. Even the Biden admin begged them to stop. Trump hasn't gone far enough with the tariffs. Well, so many people don't know about these like little intricate details. So then they decide to just say, oh, Trump is bad. Why is he starting war with Canada? And it's like, you don't understand it. He wants to level the playing field. Canada's been cheating. Maybe not as much as China or Mexico, but they have not been the best friend, quote unquote, friend to us. And Trump doesn't want them taking advantage of us. So it would make sense. So yeah, it's like, yeah. But yeah, a lot of people are talking about the Wi-Fi gate. Yeah, it was a great stream, but I think that it was held back a little bit in total viewership by the Wi-Fi errors that we had. And it was a local service problem as well. It wasn't just me. So hopefully we don't have that. But either way, it was a lot of fun. That was definitely the most fun election that I think I've covered. More fun than 2020, definitely more fun than 2022, obviously, just based on the result. 2020 was a little bit of a mess. But we got our revenge, and now we have to protect Trump's legacy, and that's why these little elections matter. They add up. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up in 2 minutes. So this will be the last call for Super Chats. If you guys want to help me hit the goal, the original goal, feel free. I know some people definitely want to hit that target. But either way, I appreciate the Super Chats. I appreciate the viewership that we've gotten, despite it being a little bit late. 1 a.m. on the East Coast is kind of insane. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Yeah, maybe that's why I have so many Australian viewers. It's because I stream the time Australians are awake and nobody else. But either way, it's fine. It's completely fine. The same person who sabotaged my Wi-Fi was the one who delayed the stream with the train. I don't know about that, unless the train crashed into the Wi-Fi thing. We had a derailment. You could blame Pete Buttigieg for that one. M Skywalker 07 says, which cabinet member shocked me the most? Like, in terms of a pick, because I didn't think Kristi Noem would be selected for DHS. But in terms of how they've been, I think Rubio shocked a lot of people. I'm glad that the best case scenario for him is coming to fruition, where he's becoming a very, very solid Secretary of State. I know it's early, but I like what I see from the guy, and hopefully he keeps on doing what he's doing. So in terms of performance, well, yeah, thanks for that one too. But I covered both, because you never know. I want to make sure I answer every question that I get the best of my ability. Tucson Paleocon, we're 3 away now, says, thoughts on Arizona's governor's race so far? Well, Andy Biggs is up in the polls. Hopefully he can find a way to win that primary. I think Robeson is overrated. I think she's a disaster. I think she's a train wreck waiting to happen. And I don't want to get too much into that. We have a long way to go. I'm sure we'll be covering it ad nauseum. But hopefully we can get some solid leadership in there that can defeat Katie Hobbs. The Videomaker 2341 says, thoughts on New Zealand and your new... I mean, I'm sure I have a couple New Zealand viewers. I don't have much thoughts on them. They're like Australia's Canada, basically. And I don't know too much about New Zealand, other than the fact that it's in Oceania. There's a few million people there. They speak English, and they're Australia's equivalent of Canada. M Skywalker 07, we're 2 away, says, could Youngkin win the Senate seat for Virginia if he runs? If it was an open seat, he might be able to, depending on the Democrat, but I don't think he'd go for it, because I think that he would probably fall to Mark Warner. So, yeah, New Zealand has woke leadership. They had like the Hillary Clinton knockoff in there. The Green Renegade says, let's make New Zealand the 52nd. Well, we got to get to 51 before we start talking about 52. But I don't know if they'd really want to. But yeah, they have really weak leadership. They're much weaker than Australia, much weaker than even Canada. Well, maybe not, but somewhere in the ballpark. Base Cat says, who moved the most right after the 2024 election? Like what state? What group? I think it's too early to tell. Probably the trends that are just continuing are going to continue. So if we want to get 2 more Teal super chats in, now would be the time. If not, we will go out too shy of our original goal. So we'll end the stream in about a minute or 2. But we got 1. We're 1 away. Now we have to hit it. Chase M for 5 says we can, I assume you mean we can hate fine or dislike fine all we want, but he is needed for the Trump agenda to be passed. Massey won't help us. I agree with you. That's why he needs to win. I'm not a fan of him, but he needs to win. And we hit our goal. M Skywalker 07, thank you for the 5, saying thoughts on Bukele. I think you did misspell his name, but pronunciation is correct. In El Salvador, you keep all the illegals, or does he have to return them to the U.S. because of the stupid judge order? Well, I think they should just send them to Guantanamo or something if they're actually dangerous. Otherwise, send them to their host countries and leave them there. So, all right, we hit our goal. It's been a great stream, guys. I will be live on Tuesday, and hopefully everybody will be there at the time the polls close in Florida, if not the time polls close in Wisconsin. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you guys like the stream down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Red Eagle out.